these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Welcome, Sit Rep 24. Thanks for joining us as we cover the most interesting news from last week and arm with the facts. Obviously, the most unfortunate news and sad news is my friend Charlie Kirk being assassinated. Last week, we actually wrapped up the recording of the Sit Rep, and right after that, the terrible news about Charlie being shot at Utah Valley University broke. And like many of you listening, we watched for updates and we prayed he was okay. Video came out pretty soon. I saw the video and, we knew the odds were low based on that video, but we still held out hope. But a few hours later, we did learn the sad reality that Charlie Kirk was assassinated for nothing more than going outside of his echo chamber and inviting conversation with those who don't agree with him. Like every major event, the first news is often incorrect, and no matter how hard it is, you gotta stop, take a breath, and wait for the facts. In the first few hours, we saw someone who was later identified as George Zinn. He was a 71-year-old Utah man who claimed he shot Charlie Kirk and was screaming, "Shoot me," on video. We heard descriptions of what people who were there saw. Then, before we even knew Charlie had succumbed to his wounds, we saw conspiracies start to emerge online. The guy in the white hat was giving hand signals. The guy in the black shirt was too. Who was the guy who seemed to be cheering? Where did the shot come from? Was it an inside job? People were asking. But as the day evolved, we learned there was indeed a suspect. A video emerged showing a black-clad figure on a distant roof. We saw video of Charlie's body being carried to the waiting SUVs. The next few days were, I actually think, pretty inspirational. Vigils were held across the country, from college campuses to sports venues to a few here right on Capitol Hill, to honor the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk. No violence, no retribution, there was just prayer. In other ways, it was also disappointing and infuriating because we saw literal celebrations of his murder, mocking of his supporters and his family. By the way, as a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old and a beautiful wife, I see a father when I see Charlie. Memorials were defaced and desecrated, and while the side that demonized and vilified him, calling him and his supporters Nazis, fascist, racist, homophobe, transphobe, tried to absolve themselves from their role in his murder. Now, the shooter, Tyler Robinson, has been charged with aggravated murder and other charges. His father, as a retired sheriff's deputy in Utah, he's the one who actually turned him into custody. His mother said that over the last year he'd become more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. He lived and reportedly had a romantic relationship with a biological man who was transitioning. But Turning Point USA is not over, folks. I also just got news that Charlie's wife has now been voted in as the new head of Turning Point, and it has surged in popularity with tens of thousands of new chapter requests coming in from high schools and colleges. So guess what? Charlie's mission will not be lost or forgotten after he's laid to rest in Phoenix, and that'll be this Sunday. Now moving on, new deal on TikTok. So after years of data privacy concerns and congressional legislation requiring Chinese divestment from TikTok, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced on Monday that the U.S. and China reached an agreement during negotiations in Madrid. President Trump and Chinese Chairman Xi are expected to speak on Friday and possibly approve the deal. Under the framework, TikTok's U.S. operations are to be transferred to a U.S.-controlled entity and resolve national security concerns, especially those regarding the way data is handled and how the algorithm works. The exact terms have yet to be made public, but of course there's concern that anything that falls short of a full Chinese divestment will fall short of the 2024 law passed to protect American data information from a foreign adversary. Now, I voted for that law, and I also support President Trump trying to get the right deal. Because look, I would be the first to be on TikTok once it's not Chinese owned. As much as it pains me to have to do another social media platform, but a lot of people use it. A lot of people use it for small business. That is not lost on us. We want a deal to be made. And I think at this point I'm optimistic that this might play out, and also address the national security concerns that are raised by CCP ownership. And look, it's not just your data. I know a lot of kids are like, I don't really care about my data. Who cares if the Chinese know about it? It's how they can weaponize it. It's how they can build a perfect AI algorithm that can show you what they want to show you the propaganda they want to show you. It is the most effective digital Trojan horse that has ever been built. So I trust President Trump to be on top of it at the moment. I also trust him on this one. So the United States has sunk another Venezuelan drug boat. President Trump is continuing his fight against the cartels as the U.S. military destroyed and sank another Venezuelan drug boat in the South Caribbean on Monday. And the White House has been clear. Look, stop trafficking drugs to our shores. You might not just get arrested, you might get killed. U.S. forces aren't going to stand idly by under Trump's leadership. They're not going to let this national security threat continue. We're putting muscle behind these efforts, and that's frankly what needs to happen to end the narco trafficking and protect our citizens. Now, of course, the Venezuelan dictator, Maduro, is crying foul, playing the victim. Meanwhile, allowing his country to become a narco state / Cuban puppet state. So for too long, we've treated the cartels like a law enforcement problem only. We let them metastasize into something much bigger, but they're fundamentally terrorists and enemies of the state. They've got their claws in the Maduro regime. They're destabilizing the region. They have been for decades. And they're making billions on American misery. So I think it's about time that we use our military to put some steel on target. You move drugs at sea, you risk getting sunk. That's the new reality that President Trump has created for these guys. In other news, President Trump has an historic second state visit to the United Kingdom. He's the first elected politician to be invited for 2 state visits to the United Kingdom. This visit really reinforces the strong and special relationship with the UK and a significant transatlantic investment. So we have by far the closest relationship with the United Kingdom on defense, security, intelligence, and this is evidence once again that peace through strength is working. Like we're not hated abroad. Democrats want to tell you that all the time. Oh, nobody wants to work with us anymore. That couldn't be further from the truth. I travel a lot. It's simply not true. President Trump is respected around the world. America is doing quite well, and this deal I think is really good. So President Trump arrived to the exact kind of pomp and circumstance you would expect from the British at Windsor Castle, and after taking Marine Corps One from the ambassador's residence, the president was greeted by the king and queen, and then toured the grounds in a carriage for the welcoming ceremony and troop inspection before laying a wreath at the tomb of Queen Elizabeth II. In the evening, American troops joined British soldiers for a retreat ceremony before a large state banquet. Sounds like a lot of fun. President Trump wrapped up the 2-day visit with a meeting with Prime Minister Keir Starmer, where they signed a technology partnership agreement that would position the U.S. and UK to lead in AI and other high-tech fields before a joint press conference. It makes a lot of sense, actually, when it comes to what the UK brings to the table on a lot of our national security issues. Cyber and technology is a big one, so this is a really good thing. Now, for the media bias of the week, where am I going to go with this? There's so many. Let's talk about MSNBC, whitewashing political violence. In the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, before we even knew he was killed in the attack, MSNBC did as much as possible to excuse, explain away, and minimize what had happened. One guest speculated against all likelihood, this is the most insane speculation, that the shooting was actually a supporter who was celebrating and accidentally shot Charlie, which of course has not even happened once at any event ever. So that's the stupidest. This is the stupidest, and also a cruel thought to even have, especially after someone's death. But I think the worst was actually Matthew Dowd, who just hours after Charlie Kirk was shot said, look, hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which ultimately lead to hateful actions. Yeah, well, guess what? MSNBC's president apologized and then took action, fired Dowd from the network. So credit where credit is due, and good on everyone who's been calling out all of these people, and good on corporate America for taking action. We're seeing a lot of this happen. Celebrating somebody's assassination, somebody who was the father of 2 small children, for just trying to go out and have legitimate debate, it's evil. It's disgusting. And you know what? The companies you work for, maybe they don't want you to work for them. Freedom of association. Other developing headlines to go through real quick. Number 1, Israel has launched a large offensive on Gaza City. This is Hamas's last stronghold. The idea here, clear the city, recover the remaining hostages. Obviously, Israel's not done with this. They intend to eliminate Hamas. Number 2, terrorism charges against Luigi Mangione. This is the guy who assassinated the United Healthcare CEO in cold blood. This was Brian Thompson. Brian Thompson, by the way, not some rich kid who grew up poor, middle class, and then worked his way up to a CEO position. I think people should know that. But the terrorism charges were dropped by a New York judge. Now he still faces second-degree murder charges. You know, it's New York. In my opinion, it should be first degree, obviously. New York has funny laws about this kind of stuff. But all I can do is hope that this guy really faces the worst end of the justice system. Number 3, the Fed has cut interest rates 0.25%. The impact may not be immediately felt, but the cut is intended to stimulate spending and investment to help with lending and borrowing. I think that's a good sign. Number 4, Jimmy Kimmel's late night show was canceled by ABC after he said conservatives are trying to capitalize on Charlie Kirk's death. And, well, the truth is, I don't remember the last time he was even funny, so maybe this was an excuse by ABC, but he said some pretty crappy stuff. Basically, he said conservatives, or the MAGA movement was spending the weekend, if I'm getting this right, he said this MAGA movement spending the weekend trying to convince everyone that this wasn't one of ours who killed Charlie. No, it wasn't one of ours who killed Charlie. Sorry, Jimmy, and not sorry that your show is gone because, you know, you suck and your show's not funny. Headline number 5, the House failed to censure Representative Ilhan Omar for her statements about Charlie Kirk. They were nasty statements. And she also shared a video calling Kirk a terrorist who believed in the subjugation of women. She is really terrible. So there's a good reason we wanted to censor her. Unfortunately, it failed. Look, we had 4 Republicans vote against it, and I'll say 3 out of 4 of those probably, you know, they're consistent on this kind of thing. They don't believe in censorship. They have a principled reason. What's interesting, though, is the 4th one who voted against it, and that's Corey Mills of Florida. So why would he, yeah, supposedly a big Charlie Kirk fan or friend, and definitely, you know, claims to be very MAGA, claims to love President Trump. Why would he vote against this kind of obvious action of against Ilhan Omar? Well, turns out what the Democrats are trying to censor him also, because of the allegations that he's dealing with right now, which is beating up a woman. So it is entirely possible that he cut a deal with Democrats, and that's why he did this. Headline number 6, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. shut down Life Alliance Organ Recovery Agency after investigations revealed it bypassed patients on waiting lists and mishandled organ donations. So this underscores a broader crackdown on unfair practices in the transplant system and efforts to restore public trust and patient safety. So good job, RFK Jr. Now, last, if you read nothing else, folks, and you're itching to read something good, here's Alicia Finley's article called Tyler Robinson and America's Lost Boys. It's in the Wall Street Journal. It's a good read about what may be a contributing factor to the increasing phenomenon of loneliness, self-destruction, and violence among some young men in America. It's an interesting read. Check it out and see if you agree. That's all. Thanks, folks.